Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Q&A session for our upcoming video course, The Holographic Enneagram, the 13-week training to heal the wounds of separation, find a place of wholeness, and embody your gifts. I'm Ann Patricio, and I'm really delighted to be here to host this Q&A conversation for the Shift Network, where we'll explore the teachings of Jessica Dibb and address questions about her 13-week course, The Holographic Enneagram, which begins Thursday, July 25th. Now, even if you're unable to join us live, you can still participate in this course, and I'll be sharing more about that later. I did want to mention before we get started that the area I'm in is experiencing some connection issues. So I apologize now for any visual glitches you may see. We're expecting the audio to be strong and stable, and it is going to be a wonderful hour with Jessica. And now I want to introduce my guest. Jessica Dibb is one of our beloved faculty and the host of our Enneagram Summit. She's a founder, spiritual director, and principal teacher of the Inspiration Consciousness School, a very unique school dedicated to promoting personal, relational, and planetary wellness. Jessica's work is grounded in a highly integrated approach of psycho-spiritual healing and development to support self-actualization. In just a few minutes, we're going to open up for your questions. But first, I want to welcome Jessica, who will begin today by leading us in an opening practice. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you so much, Anne, and welcome everyone. I know that you're here because you care about the quality of life itself, that you're actually choosing to spend time to inquire into how each of us can develop ourselves, dissolve the wounds that separate us from ourselves and from each other, and to embody our gifts so that we can participate and contribute more fully in co-creating the world that we all know is possible. So we'd like to begin by doing this brief practice that is a taste of how it is that, from a holographic perspective, we can experience the presence of wholeness, the presence of awakening, the presence of essence itself, even in the midst of what appears to be our most unconscious or dark self. So this is a way of really working with ourselves that goes underneath triggering any shame and invites us to nourish our deepest potentials into the full light of day. So we're going to use the intelligence of the three centers: body, which is somatic intelligence; emotion or feeling, which comes out of the heart and is emotional intelligence; and awareness itself, which comes out of an awakened mind, which is cognitive intelligence. So I want to invite you to receive your breath. We usually think about taking a deep breath, and that's a way that we still own the breath, like we're going to utilize it for something. But the space that we're trying to open up to through this course, for instance, and through the very deep consciousness work with the Enneagram, is not coming from the who we usually take ourselves to be. It is coming from the deep potential of the unconditioned plane and our deepest gifts. So instead of taking a deep breath, soften yourself to receive the breath, to allow it to breathe you more deeply, to be affected by it more completely, to be awakened by it more fully. So as you feel how it energizes you more completely, the more you soften and surrender to its depth, just briefly bring your attention to your belly, to your stomach, to the whole area between your navel and your perineum and the tip of your spine, and feeling the strong sensations there as you breathe and your diaphragm is moving. Let yourself receive the vitality, the sensations, the power of life itself in the physical presence of your body being animated, being dynamically charged by the breath. And then just know that from an Enneagram perspective, types 8, 9, and 1, and the 8, 9, and 1 in all of us experience many emotions when our presence, our physical presence, our sense of substantiality and immediacy and aliveness, and our kind of belonging here and having the rightness and the goodness of being here, when that is interrupted, the 8, 9, 1 and the 8, 9, 1 in all of us experiences most readily as an emotion anger, rage. And I'd like you to have the courage right now to just contact any way that you can feel anger or rage inside of yourself. And rather than feel something is wrong about that, receive your breath into that anger, into that rage, and experience that that energy, that power is an insistence that your life is meant to be. It's an insistence that you should not be stamped out. It's an insistence that there's something of goodness to be here. And so rather than the emotion of the anger, it becomes a power. It becomes a life force. And let's take a deep breath into that. And now let's receive our breath as we continue to do so, looking or experiencing how it expands and opens our chest. So you actually, when you're breathing out, you can soften the chest, letting yourself become very tender and vulnerable each time you breathe out. And feel how we do have this tenderness. We have an ability to be affected by life, by what happens in life, by the situations that we're in, the emotions of people, the sights, the sounds, all of the senses. We have the capacity to be impacted by these things, to be affected by them. Our heart responds to the impressions of life. And it knows that everything is deserving of love, and everything has a potential, and everything is deeper and more mysterious than it probably knows. And wouldn't it be wonderful if we could somehow support that? And when that is in any way cut off, when the value of that part of life is disconnected from in ourselves or between us and anyone else, our hearts, which in Enneagram we would say the 2, 3, and 4 in all of us, experience a lot of emotions, including it can be rage. But the most important one, the one that will happen most readily, is sadness and grief. And so let yourself contact a part of you that has felt sadness and grief at any point in your life. And as you receive the breath into that sadness and grief, know that what this is really the energy of is insisting that things have value, advocating that you have value, that life has value, that things should not be mistreated. And so rather than feeling that there's something wrong about your sadness or depression even, or anguish, or your grief, to feel the beauty in it, that it is a stand for value and love. And now as we continue to receive our breath, maybe your breath is getting even deeper, bring your awareness to the center of your head, and how your head and your brain are illuminated, activated, nourished by the breath itself, with the capacity then to see, to become aware, to recognize truth, to recognize reality, to see metaphorically and literally how things are, to understand, to in a sense be able to guide yourself, navigate yourself through, to have insight and intuition. And when this part of us is cut off from ourselves or between us and life, we can feel many emotions, but the 5, 6, and 7 in all of us will most readily experience fear, anxiety, like the guidance, the higher wisdom has been lost. And we usually feel some kind of shame about that fear or fear of fear itself, but breathe into your fear right now. And recognize that the fear is a way of advocating for the fact that there actually is a place of hope and excitement, that we could be guided, that we could be awake, that we could be aware, that if we didn't feel fear, we just wouldn't react at all. But in the loss of contact with true seeing and true guidance, we know that something is off, and that fear is a way of telling us that we are excited about finding that guidance again. So now take, or rather receive your breath now through your belly, through your chest, and into your head. Maybe with the colors red in the belly, gold or green in the chest, and blue, deep dark blue and purple in the head. And allow yourself to experience our connection with this moment, with our bodies, hearts, and minds, and with each other. And from this place, let us listen with a body that's saying yes to its power and life force, a heart that is open to the value and the beauty and the meaning of what we're doing, and a head that is awake and willing to discover the truth. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Jessica. What a great way to start. So we'll be spending our time together exploring your questions for Jessica as we prepare for her upcoming course, The Holographic Enneagram, which begins Thursday, July the 25th. I encourage you to go over and visit our website, theholographicenneagram.com. That's theholographicenneagram.com. You'll learn all about this 13-week comprehensive course and find a link to register. So let's get started. I want to thank everyone who sent in such thoughtful questions through our webcast in anticipation of this event. And if you're joining us live and have a question, please just type it in and I'll be happy to read it. We're going to begin with a question that was sent in through the webcast. Angelo and several others have asked, can you help us understand what the holographic approach is and how it differs from other teachings of the Enneagram?
Thank you so much, Angelo, and everyone else for that question. That is the cutting edge piece of this course. So there are two aspects that I'll speak to now, and obviously we'll go into much more depth in the course. But one is just, first of all, that I've had a dream for a long time of being able to create and construct for people a deep 1-hour immersion into each type where we actually cover the whole of the Enneagram map as we currently teach it in the Enneagram field, all the way from the sort of the gift and the essence of what each type is or what each domain is, to the core wound, the place of separation from that, to the shadow that creates, to the what we call the passion or the suffering, the core suffering that is created, to the fixation, which is the mental compensation or defense mechanism, then the instinctual, like what is it, for instance, if would be talking about a type 1, what would that look like if that person's instinctual drive was dominated by social or sexual or self-pres? We'll talk about the wings, which in this case would be the 9 and the 2. We'll talk about the directions of dynamism that we can grow into or devolve into, which in this case would be 7 and 4. We'll talk about what happens in the heart when the passion or the suffering is transformed in presence and becomes a virtue. So the virtue of that. And then we'll talk about what happens in the mind when the mental habit and the fixation is brought into presence and transformed into the holy idea. And lastly, we'll talk about essence. So usually not quite all of those things are taught in any one training. And what I'm wanting to do is deliver them in a concise and really articulated and brilliant sharing, so that people can feel for themselves and for those that they care about and those that they work with and just the world in general, what's the whole of the domain of that type. Then the most important part from there is, what can we now understand about how every part of that map is a reflection of the gift, the essence of that type. So rather than so we're going to take this to a next level. The Enneagram, I feel, already has excelled in terms of when you really understand your type and you understand the orientation to use the Enneagram with in terms of your personal growth. It presents you with an objective and compassionate platform to look at things that otherwise, behaviors and mental habits and defensive mechanisms that even in our best of moments, we're still going to feel really shy about or ashamed about. And the Enneagram's already great about taking the shame out and objectivity and compassion. Well, the holographic Enneagram is going to take that, I hope, to the next level even, where we're going to see how even the core wound, even the shadow that is created from it, even the way that the passion that is developed from it, the core suffering, even the way that we defensively create a mental habit that protects us is actually a reflection of that essence still at work. So that what we are going to be able to do is both move more deeply with the energies, because there's going to be even more compassion, more like objectivity, but also to see that wherever we're working on the map is actually connecting us to every other part. It's connecting us to our instincts. If we're working on our heart, we're actually working on our head. If we're working on the instinctual drives, we're actually working on the virtues or the holy ideas or our essence or our core wound. And so there's going to be a real understanding about that. And that's going to then culminate in a 15-minute experiential practice that goes through all of those dimensions, again, in a very concise and very sort of pinpointed way, precise way of understanding and experiencing the shift of the hologram. So the capacity, the potential for this to lead us to a more immediate sense of wholeness with even our greatest shadows, I think is really, cutting edge. I really do. And I've been doing this work inside of myself in preparation for this and working with some of my students. And I have just found it to be like, very quick, if not instantaneous change from a sense of deficiency or devaluing or lack of lovability or undeserving or just a little bit of shame or shyness to a sense of real wholeness and celebration and redemption pretty immediately. So I hope that helps us understand what the holographic approach is and what the impact of studying this way may be.
Thanks, Jessica. Barbara and also others, we're consolidating some questions so we can get to as many as possible. They're asking, what do you do if you can't figure out your type, or if you've taken the test several times and have come up with different scores, or you feel like you're between two types?
Yeah, okay. So that's so beautiful that you're asking that question, because all of you that are, Barbara and everyone, because first of all, it shows that you're not willing to settle for less than the truth. You really want the real authentic thing. And I'm so glad to hear that you're not just like willing to take on whatever number, and you want that clarity, and that's an important part of this. So let me assure you from a place of clarity, even if you were to mistype yourself at first, as long as you're growing from the way that you're working with the material, that's the real value and the benefit of the Enneagram. I came across the Enneagram when I had already been doing years and years of personal work and intrapsychic exploration and, deep amounts of psychological inquiry and spiritual practice and humanistic modalities. And I was amazed at how quickly, even with all that I was already doing and the tremendous results that were happening with me and my students, how quickly the Enneagram helped dissolve what had been some really almost intractable kinds of challenges. And I think because many of us have come to understand that no matter what your type is, you're going to have to do all 9 pathways, because we're actually, those 9 dimensions actually represent reality and the totality of a human being. And the type or the temperament is a choosing or a physiological sort of arising from biology of a predilection towards one of those 9. And then we overutilize it to defend ourselves against pain. But actually, we have all 9 capacities inside of us. So no matter what type you work with, as long as you're getting some growth from it, then it's good. Now, in the search, though, to actually find your type, what is good about finding your type is that you understand more readily where it is that you forget who you really are, where it is that you most become afraid, how it is that you can abandon your deepest capacities most readily. And that's where knowing your type is invaluable. Some people know their type right away. Some people take years. These tests, none of them are 100%. I think the best tests that have been monitored by companies that do personality testing and can compare results have found that some of these tests have about, as high as into the 80%, 90% range, but none of them are 100% yet. And so what you would do is you would take the ones that you have the highest marks on, and you would notice if there were any relational patterns. For instance, if you tested high as 4 and 1, then you would notice that those lines are connected on the Enneagram map. And so that would make sense that you're either a 4 that goes to 1 a lot or a 1 that goes to 4 a lot, because those lines show where we most quickly, when we're either growing or disintegrating, sort of being stressed and trying to compensate, where we will shunt to most readily to get either additional defensive mechanisms or to get more of a support of essential qualities and healthy qualities. Or you might notice that one test says that you're a 2 but you've got a lot of 3, and another test says you're a 3 but you've got a lot of 2, and that would have to do with the wings. So there are things that you can start to look at like that. But ultimately, you should not feel at all shy. It's very, very normal that you would be in an inquiry within yourself about which of these types really speaks to the thing that matters to me the most in life, my essence, if you will, and which of these types reflects the deepest fear that I have. And you will find it that way. Now, having said that, there's a new book out by Ginger Lapid Bogda, The Art of Typing, which I think is very, very good for helping to discriminate what your type may be. And also, for instance, on the EnneagramInstitute.com website, they will, and in some of the books that have been written by, for instance, Don Riso and Russ Hudson, they do have portions where they'll say, if you're having trouble differentiating between are you a 2 and a 6, here are some things to look at. So these are some of the things that you can be playing with. But as long as you're growing, it's all good, because we're all 9 types in the end.
Wonderful. I'm going over to a question from Nancy, who relates to a 4 with a 5 wing. And she's asking, what's the best way for us to lean into our gifts?
That's a beautiful question, Nancy, because isn't that, in the end, the thing that matters the most? So one of the things that we'll be looking at in the holographic Enneagram is how our fear-based ego, I'm not talking about the healthy ego that results when we are present and when we're awake. That's just the building of a human being interacting with all their potentials and having some inner architecture to relate to the world. Like I can speak English and I know how to cook this food or whatever. And there are many qualities to the ego structure that are very, very helpful for life. But the fear-based ego, which is the mistaken identity that we are separate, that we are a separate thing in time and space from the source, from other people, even from parts of ourselves, that part is confusing and giving us, in a sense, misguidance about what resources, what potential, what capacities that we have. And so one of the things we'll be looking at in the holographic Enneagram is how the fear-based ego tends to actually co-opt the very gifts we have, because it thinks that it's going to create an identity that helps it feel more secure, gives it a sense of like, what's my reason for being here? What can I sort of say that I am so that I don't just feel lost. And so, for instance, of being a 4, the 4 is likely to want to create an identity out of depth, out of mystery, out of beauty, out of just this incredibly ephemeral beauty and the deep mysteries of life. So they'll do it by trying to be a deep person and trying to be a mysterious person and trying to be a unique person. And that's how the ego subtly co-opts the very thing which is their deepest gift. I can assure you, and I can say this about every type, I just happen to be talking about a 4 right now, that 4s absolutely, without any effort on their part, bring an incredible depth and mystery and beauty to the world just by being, being utterly relaxed without having any agenda about how to be or differentiating themselves from anybody else or trying to be different or unique. And so the very first thing about how we access our deepest gifts is that we relax out of the kinds of compulsions, our agendas that we feel. The 1 wants to make everything right. The 2 wants to make sure that there's love and kindness in the room. The 8 wants to make sure everything is fair and it's really vivid and alive. And we need to sort of soften out of anything that we feel is like a kind of compulsion, like our attention keeps going to that's the thing, instead of, from this holographic perspective and just the Enneagram in general, is inviting us to be with ourselves exactly as we are. And when we do that and we relax into it, and our autonomic nervous system gets reset so that the parasympathetic nervous system is able to access more readily the right brain, and not just the sympathetic nervous system with the left brain, what happens is the natural gifts that we have, the deep potentials that we have, just start to arise. Now, from there, we can also go into each type very specifically and say, well, here's something that you can do. And oftentimes, we'll get practices like this in the course. Oftentimes, some of those things are, here's things not to do, right? So, for instance, the 4 is going to be very attached. They'll have a deep, incredible experience of something that feels real and authentic through these practices and these understandings. And then they'll be like so wanting to fulfill their old fear-based sense that they have to just be deep and unique, that they'll just kind of keep it in to themselves and keep going over it and over it again, instead just like getting up and moving in their body and making a cup of tea and helping someone and like trusting that this depth is an intrinsic part of life. That's just one little practice. So there's going to be all kinds of things like ways to breathe and move and questions to ask yourself and insights that you can have. So just very briefly for this Q&A, that's something that I can say. But this is the real reason that we're doing this work, isn't it? Because we all have a deep, really infinite capacity, and we're trying to awaken every cell of our body, every feeling of our heart, and every thought of our mind to pay attention and to be of service to and to embody those gifts.
Thanks, Jessica. So we definitely have time for more questions. And again, if you have a question and you're joining us live today, please type it in and I'll bring it forward with the webcast questions. But before we go into those, I just want to give you a few details about the holographic Enneagram. So as you might be able to tell from Jessica's answers so far, this is really going to be a powerful 13 weeks to explore Jessica's teachings that are really new, something that she's created from her own desire, a real calling to bring a new Enneagram teaching forward right here for us. And it will allow us to all become more available to embody love and wisdom and presence in every moment and in every situation. And a feature of this course is that there will be 11 live sessions with Jessica and 2 additional integration sessions. And those will be facilitated by her Enneagram coaches that she personally trained, and they'll be there to support Q&A and small group discussion, and those will happen after modules 4 and 7, beautifully placed after 4 and 7. All right, so this course will take place on Thursdays at 12 noon Pacific, starting July the 25th. And again, if you can't join us for reasons of any conflicts in your schedule, don't worry about it. You won't miss the teachings. We make it really easy. You receive an audio and video replay and transcripts and all handouts through your course homepage, which I call the virtual classroom. And I'd like to remind you that we also offer a no-risk money-back guarantee on all of our courses, giving you a full 2 weeks. And in this case, that's until August the 8th to make sure you absolutely love the course. And as an added bonus, there will be a private Facebook community group. You heard Jessica mention that. She participates in that Facebook group. If you listen to the intro interview with Stephen Dinan, she shared that she will be active on there and answering questions and wants to hear your experiences in the course. So we're super excited, as you can tell, Jessica is as well. So we're going back over for some questions now. And let me take this one. So Melissa says, I was told I was a 1, but I resonate more with 2. And I have all the struggles of the 2, but my being longs to love all unconditionally and compassionately hold the space for others to heal and know their worth. However, my blocks seem to be in not valuing myself enough to step forward or be acknowledged for the gifts I have. I'm also super sensitive to everything, more in a tuned-in way. How can the study of this course help me with the true freedom that I seek?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, Melissa, it's so touching to hear your honesty and your vulnerability and your self-assessment, You're not trying to shape an image there. So I have to say, first of all, one way that would really help in this course is that you yourself would be entering it with such willingness and humility. And as a 2, which I have to say, I don't like to type people because I feel that discovery from within is so important, but the way you describe yourself certainly is incredibly descriptive of type 2, the sort of unwillingness or reticence to step forward, to not feel one's own value. And the virtue of the 2, is humility. And this is not a false humility, which the 2 is very capable of doing from their fear-based self, but it's the real humility of knowing that we do need help, that we actually do have limitations, that the 2, does need support and has needs like everybody else. And right from the get-go, here you are, sort of saying in these beautiful ways what are some of the challenges that you face. So I think you would enter the material with absolutely the right orientation. And that since we would be doing the course from the completely non-shamed based place, to the best of our ability, this is really going to be a feast of the celebration of potential for each of us, the celebration, the actualization of capacity. And so I think that your openness and humility and genuine inquiry meeting that milieu, that matrix, is going to give you energetically just an amazing matrix for feeling safe, but also charged, dynamically activated, to relax out of your habits and to try on completely new things. And that's what we'll be doing. We will be seeing through the unconscious things that each of us do in that type, and we will be actively learning new ways that we can be. That's going to be part of what the experiential practices are going to be about, is actually showing how we take these energies that have been going into these habits and these patterns and these unconscious ways of being, these fixations and sufferings, and we're going to experience the lived, felt energy of the gift of each of the types and be invited to relate from that place, to care for ourselves from that place, to be from that place, to guide ourselves from that place. So I think that the course, when I think about the 2 and all of the things that we will be exploring in the 2, I feel like you would absolutely get support for understanding the value of the gifts that you have, the reasons that you do the things that you do, like hold back, don't develop certain parts of yourself. That's not uncommon for a 2, that you'll understand that with such compassion, and then you will have a visceral sense of allowing those things to come forward.
All right. Thank you so much for that answer, Jessica. There are a few people, including Linda, who's asking, I'm open and new to this. It all sounds like it might be a lot of information, but I'm really interested. I'm concerned it might be over my head with material. Can you speak to that?
Linda, part of creating a hologram or recognizing that everything actually is holographic in nature is that I wanted to have the course be appropriate for both complete newcomers and for people that have been working with the Enneagram for 30 or 40 years. So if you're a beginner, what you're doing is getting an introduction to the Enneagram from this holographic perspective, but you're going to get all the building blocks and foundations that you would get in any Enneagram course. And if you're a person that's been studying for 30 or 40 years, what you're going to get is you're both going to get that next layer of revelation of the masks falling away, the defenses falling away, the touching the more essential, authentic core of what we actually are instead of what our ego is taking ourselves to be. And you're going to get these set of experiential practices, including a unique breathing style for each to support the gifts and the evolution of each type. So I feel, if you're worried about being overwhelmed, I don't think that you will be at all. I think you're going to be guided step by step. The actual download of each, and what I mean by download is the actual teaching of the whole map of each type is going to be very clear, very concise. There will be some handouts that go along with it at some point in the course. You're going to be able to review the material whenever you want, either by reading it, because you'll have a word-by-word transcript, or you'll have the video of me or the audio. And these coaches that Anne has shared with you about, these are coaches that I have handpicked. They've all been students of mine. They're not just Enneagram coaches. I've trained them in psychospiritual facilitation. They all have training in deep potentiated breath work. Some of them are also certified coaches on top of that. The depth, the level of coaching that they are going to give, I have to say, with utter joy, is a cut above anything that you can really even imagine. So there's going to be so many resources for you. We want to build a real sense of community here. It's a pivotal time for all of us on this planet. We want our planet to be okay. We want our children or our grandchildren to be okay. We want ourselves to be fully flowered. And so we're going to do everything that we can do to create a community of caring, of clarity, of guidance, of support, so that, and really of deep immersion, so that everyone, whether again an entry level or somebody that's been studying for 30 years, feels like they have moved significantly to the next level of their own actualization. So I hope that helps.
All right. We have a question from someone who's a coach who uses the Enneagram in my practice with individuals and groups, and I'm excited to take this course. Given its comprehensive and sometimes complex nature, what advice can you suggest as the best way to introduce the Enneagram so it's something that can be used for transformation for groups and individuals?
Well, every type is different in terms of where their attention is and what therefore might trigger their sense of being seen. But I feel like if you can start, and we're going to certainly do this with the holographic Enneagram course, we're going to start with the intelligence, the beauty, the depth and the capacity and the contribution that each type makes. And I feel like so often people, I'm thinking about, for instance, a time when I was watching a group of ones they were at a classroom. We were working on the Enneagram, and there were about 6 ones all up at the front, and they were talking about themselves. Ones appear to be so efficient, and they are very efficient, and on top of it, and action-oriented, and sort of rising above their emotions to get things done. And I'll never forget the moment when this one got very, very teary and said, I don't think that, I wish that what all of you would understand is that when we're trying to fix you, it's because we love you. And we want you to have a really, really, really great life. And I think what I have seen is that every person is touched in the core of their heart, or in their sense of truth sense, like their mind recognizes it. If you can see what it is that their soul and their psyche are really after, what is it that type just so loves about life and wants to have happen. It's not only does it light up that person to be seen that way, but it inspires them, and it gives them hope that maybe there's a place for their soul, if you will, to really come forth in life. So for me, I almost always bring that to people before I describe anything about the fear or the compulsion or the fixation. Then I do that in the context of what this gift is. And we'll certainly be modeling that in this class.
All right. So a question that is coming over Facebook is, how can this teaching help raise my power of telepathy?
Wow, that's a great question, and it will. If we talk about telepathy as definitely just as intuition, but intuition that is boundless in a sense, that is connected to what Carl Jung would call the collective unconscious, shall we say. The way that I actually teach the Head Center, and there's scientific, underpinnings for this, is that everything actually can be known because everything is a holographic image of everything else. So within everything, it lies the sort of knowing and the being and the caring about everything else. And while that seems like a very lofty goal, like how could it ever be that each of us as a human being would know everything? I don't know that, that's something that's going to happen widespread right at this time in history, but who knows? Anything's possible. But what I do know is that as we get clearer about let's just take some of the essential qualities that each of the types represent, such as love, power, depth, clarity, goodness, joy. Those are just some of them. As we get clearer about what those things actually are, as opposed to our fear-based, egoic take on them or version of them, we relax into the larger field of the collective mind that we all are. And we stop having to separate parts of ourselves from other parts of ourselves. So instead of having like the head, we sort of like, we use the head for some things we're doing and we use the heart at other times. There's going to be such a sense of coherence of all three centers that the fourth sort of center, or the intuition, the spiritual self, if you will, can open up more readily. So I have found that I've actually used the Enneagram with the following teaching, that most people experience intuition, or telepathy, if you will. That's one way of experiencing intuition. As they like experience it through their heart. They'll say, for instance, my heart just felt it. Or they'll say, I just knew it in my gut. Or someone else will say, I had a vision, or I just had a direct knowing. And when most of us only get our guidance, our intuition, and our sense of the things that are possible from that more awakened self, like telepathy, we only do it through one center. And it works some of the time, and then we wonder why it doesn't work all of the time. Well, when you develop all three centers in terms of inner guidance, then you start getting a consistent, stabilized knowing, which would include things like intuition, telepathy, all of that kind of stuff. And it becomes something that you can be confident about, that's happening more readily. So I have definitely seen and experienced and taught about the increase and the expansion of that through the use of the Enneagram.
All right. Well, I really encourage you to go over to visit our website, theholographicenneagram.com, for all the details and to register for your course if you'll be joining us. And everyone who does join us receives a really extensive holographic Enneagram bonus collection. And this includes, it's really one of the most extensive bonus collections I've seen in our courses. So you'll really be getting something special. The first one is a video teaching by Jessica and her colleague, Russ Hudson. It's called Inner Work and the Instincts, Bringing Presence to Your Instinctual Drives. And this will really prepare you to start hearing about the instinctual drives in the course. Also, there's an audio teaching between Jessica and her friends and colleagues, Russ Hudson, Helen Palmer, and the dear and wonderful David Daniels, who's no longer with us, but such a gift to the Enneagram world. It's called Practitioner Principles for Co-Creating Dynamic, Empowering, and Enduring Change with Clients. For those of us who are coaches and work with clients, that's called Utilizing the Enneagram to Guide, Inspire, and Ground Transformational Process. Another wonderful bonus that you may have heard Jessica speak about when she spoke to Stephen is called In Their Own Voices. This is about the types speaking, and this is Jessica with many, many voices of the Enneagram. We also are offering a 3 centers meditation by Jessica and Russ Hudson, and the original ideas behind the Enneagram, which is a really great background by Russ Hudson and Cynthia Bourgeot. And finally, What Creates Transformation, the Pragmatics of Change, an audio dialogue with Russ and David Daniels. And when you register by midnight Pacific, July 18th, that's today, you'll receive an additional $50 off the course. That's an expiring bonus. So if you'd like to catch that bonus, please register with us today, July 18th. And the course is already such a great value, but I'm telling you that that $50 will be wonderful for some of you that jump on with us. So I have a question from Lynn that I want to bring forward. She says, I do not have even all the basics of the Enneagram down. None of us do, Lynn, right? I would say even those that have been doing it a long time, but find it informative and intriguing as a way of understanding myself and accepting others. Will you be discussing how our brains support a holographic approach to the Enneagram?
Absolutely. It's absolutely great. It's a wonderful question, and it's one of my favorite topics. I love introducing some of the neuroscience and some of the theories of people like Dr. Dan Siegel, who's a colleague of mine as well, and understanding how mind, the actual experience of mind, and an integrated mind, a well-integrated mind, actually supports all the differentiations rather than tries to dumb them down. And from those differentiations growing to their maximum, we can promote linkages between them, and that actually supports higher integration. So the Enneagram's amazing because we're supporting 9 different differentiations in each one of us and then seeing the connectivity. And so, we'll definitely be bringing in pieces. I can just see myself saying things that reflect current neurological and neurobiological understanding.
Great. Crystal over on Facebook is asking, when you speak of the wings, does everyone have a wing they relate to more than the other? And how important is knowing your wing? There have been a few people asking about wings, so I'd love to hear you speak about that.
Yeah, so the wings are interesting. I feel like the wings are still one part of the theory that, all of the parts of the map are still being developed, but the wings is certainly one that is, I think, still going to evolve, and we're going to understand a lot more about it. So some people feel that we have one wing when we're a child, and then we tend to go to the other one as we get older to round ourselves out. Some people feel that we have both wings and we utilize them as needed or at different times of our life. And some people feel that we really have one wing that there's some way that as we developed, that part worked for us, and so we really developed it, and it's always there for us. And here's what I would say again, just like I said earlier to one question about not knowing your type. Two things. One is that whatever's helping you grow, whatever you recognize about yourself in any of the ways that you would relate to the material, whatever is helping you grow is good. It really is. And since we're going to be working all 9 pathways, then we're going to be working both wings that you have anyway. I think as you get clearer, though, about what the core wound and the core gift of each of the types are. And I think as you start to get clearer about the capacities of each type, you do tend to see, I think, for instance, earlier in my life, I hung out in one of the wings of my type. And I think as I developed my vocation as an adult, the other wing became so prominent that now I would describe myself that way. But I don't ever want to be fixated about it. So it's just a way of understanding what dynamics are taking place in us. So I think even just being in the question of your wings is going to be powerful.
Thanks, Jessica. Well, before we wrap this up,
and one more thing I should just say about the wings, but in general for the wings, everyone, we all of us tend to pretty much think the wings are more of a supportive role to us. The challenges of them, the distortions of them don't tend to play out as much with us for some reason. It just tends to be that the support of them comes in and helps us with our type.
Oh, thanks for clarifying that. So, Jessica, before we finish, I would just love to have you speak to what you're most excited to share in this course. I think it's so exciting that it's something that you're feeling called to share and that it's new. And so whatever you want to share with us before we close today.
Thank you so much, Anne. Thank you for this very gracious and articulate hosting, by the way, which segues me into also just wanting to really profoundly thank the Shift Network, because this is a course I've been teaching with them for many years, and ordinarily this course would be quite a bit more costly, at least another $100, and I really asked them with a lot of passion, could they please keep this more at this price, because it was a celebration of the over 35,000 people that we reached this year with the Enneagram Global Summit. So if you've been thinking about doing an Enneagram course, this might really be the time to jump in, because this is really our offering to everyone to make it as accessible as possible. And I want to thank the Shift for responding to that call. You know what excites me most about this course, Anne, and everybody out there? I have never met a person that I didn't see that at the core of them, they wanted to love, they wanted to be love, they wanted that love to come forth in some concrete way, some embodied way in their life. And I know that we are going to be creating a community of such inspiration, like the level of inspiration here about what each of these energies is for our world. What each of these, like, it's almost like one of the things I'll be saying at times is the fives are trying to help us all remember this about life. The threes are trying to help us all remember this about life. So there's contributions that the types are making individually, but also archetypally, at the level of the collective. And I know that every person wants to be inspired to literally flower themselves into life completely, to give it everything that they are. And that's the community that we're going to be creating. It's going to have caring, it's going to have this, empathy and compassion and attunement and nourishment of each soul. It's also going to have this incredible clarity that helps us see through our blind spots and our delusions and our confusions. And there's going to be a great sense of energy, because we're going to be doing physical practices that go with this, breathing and movement and just feeling and sensing things in our body. So what excites me most is each of you and what you have to bring to life as a being, as a mother, as a father, as a sister, as a significant other, as a plumber, as a baker, as a physician, as a coach, as an Enneagram teacher, as whatever it is that you are. I know that you're it. And this is a way of us getting to that itness without attaching a false sense of identity a need to be a certain way, a need to be seen a certain way. It's a way to actually embody and experience our authentic, natural, essential self. So I look forward to doing that with you.
Thanks, Jessica. Well, everyone, it's been such a wonderful hour. Thanks for all your questions. The holographic Enneagram begins Thursday, July the 25th. And again, please visit theholographicenneagram.com to learn more and to register. And remember, if you do so by midnight tonight, July 18th, you'll get an additional $50 off. Well, Jessica, over to you for any last words and your farewell.
So I encourage each of you, you all have a circle of influence. However small or large that may be, or whatever you perceive it to be, I think everyone out there has a circle of influence of many, many people. And I am so heartened that you're here, that you're caring enough about how you could develop yourself, because I think that's going to develop our world. And so I just want to offer a deep bow and appreciation to each of you for paying attention to these things that matter so very much to us being true human beings, to look at where it is that we're blocked from love and awakening and embodiment, and to develop ourselves. So I wish everyone many blessings, and I thank you for sharing this time together.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. And on behalf of all of us here at the Shift Network, we wish you well. And we just look forward to having you on a course with us now or in the future. Be well.